Welcome back to my kitchen. Because of my dad's heritage, I enjoyed several kinds of meat and vegetable stuffed rolls from Europe, but there are of course many different types of stuffed pockets from other countries, like calzones, pasties, stromboli, ravioli, wontons, egg rolls, empanadas, knish, just to name a few. And the Latvian, German, and Russian rolls that I grew up enjoying can vary widely based on different regions within these countries. There are many different styles of bread or pastry, and even a wider variety of fillings. And I will of course be sharing my memories of what I learned from my mom and dad. The German Bierocks is a baked roll generally made with a yeast dough and stuffed with a mix of onion, ground beef, and cabbage. The very popular Runza burger of Nebraska was inspired by the Bierocks. The Russian Piroshki is a hand pie traditionally made with a yeast dough and stuffed with meat, onion, dill, and sometimes rice, potatoes, cabbage, and egg. It's often fried, but some recipes also call for baking it. The Latvian stuffed bacon bun is called the Pirogi, and this is my favorite. I just can't imagine how you can come up with a better combination than bacon and onion all wrapped up in a nice little pillow of soft dough and baked until golden brown and delicious. They make for great road food, finger food, lunchbox food, and snack food. Served alongside soup or salad, the savory filling wrapped in tender bread shines, and they generally steal the show. Some purists follow family recipes that call for making the filling on day one and allowing it to refrigerate, and finishing the buns on day two using a long-rising yeast dough, and the process can be rather lengthy. I'm going to shorten the process and make the pierogi in a few hours, but don't worry, the end results will be every bit as delicious as the 2-day process. At least I think so anyway. So let's get going. I'll start with the filling and use about 2 cups of yellow onion, diced very small, and thin sliced bacon, also diced very small. The bacon is a little easier to slice if it's about half frozen. I have just under 2 pounds of bacon that I'm using. I will give the bacon a head start in the frying pan, and when the fat begins to melt, I will add the onions and black pepper. You don't want to cook the bacon until it is crispy done. In fact, for the best rolls, you cook the bacon no more than halfway. After the onions have lost some of their moisture and are translucent, I will allow the mixture to cool, uncovered, as a lid will slow the cooling rate and trap moisture. It is about 35 degrees outside, so I'll just set this out on my outdoor bench to cool. Now I have a long-standing memory of a piroshki that my mom made when I was very young, probably around 11 or 12 years old, and it was so delicious. It was filled with cabbage, onion, and hard-boiled egg. I know it doesn't sound that great, but I couldn't get enough of them. So I'm going to make a few piroshki using the same dough that I'm using for the pierogi, and what I think is a traditional filling of cabbage, onion, hard-boiled egg, and dill. And now for the dough. Now, I'm not qualified to do a comprehensive explanation on the art and science of bread making and developing wonderful flavors and textures, but I can share a bit of what I've learned that might be helpful if you're new to making bread. Yeast breads pretty much fall into one of two categories: a lean dough or an enriched dough. Lean breads have very little or no fats, sugar, or dairy, and are basically made of flour, water, salt, and yeast. Think baguettes, pizza dough, sourdough, Italian breads, crusty hard rolls, doughs like that. The dough can be very stiff and does not lend itself to intricate shaping or sculpting. Lean bread dough does not require a lot of kneading, and the dough rises faster than an enriched dough. Enriched bread contains a high amount of fat, most often from eggs, milk, and butter. The fat tenderizes the dough by coating and shortening the gluten strands, and it makes for a softer dough that can be easily braided, rolled, and shaped. Think like brioche, challah bread, donuts, soft and buttery dinner rolls, cinnamon rolls, etc. There are so many other things to learn beyond the lean and enriched categories, like unleavened breads, shortbreads, quick breads, savory and sweet breads, and gluten-free breads. Yeasts, enzymes, and acids play a role, as do different flours and seeds and additives. Beer bread, potato bread, soda bread, cornbread, tortillas, naan bread, and pita bread, and crumpets will take you around the world. The techniques used to make biscuits, breadsticks, baguettes, and bagels are all different, but the end results all seem like a little bit of bread making magic has happened. So the dough I'm making here is of course an enriched dough. I use 1 cup of warm milk, 1 cup of warm water, 2 tablespoons of yeast, and a tablespoon of sugar. I let that dissolve for 5-10 minutes until the yeast begins to foam, and then I will add the flour, a half a cup of melted butter, a half a cup of sour cream, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a tablespoon of diastatic malt powder. I use my dough hook to give it a little bit of a hand mix and give my mixer a head start. And then once those dry and wet ingredients are incorporated, I will set a timer for 5 minutes and let the mixer do the kneading for me. After that 5-minute kneading in the mixer, I will cover the dough with a damp cloth and let it rest for 10 or 15 minutes. I am using my scale to weigh out the dough for each pierogi. Traditionally, a Latvian pierogi is small, and I like them small, but you could of course make them the size you prefer. For each pierogi, I use 1 ounce of dough, and of course there is more than one way to shape a pierogi. I'm just going to show you the 2 ways that I do it. And this, of course, is the time-consuming part of making pierogis, but once you get your technique perfected, it'll go a bit quicker. So here's where I begin to shape the pierogi. I will show you in real time the shaping of several examples of each style, and then I'll speed up the video so as to not bore you with the making of each roll. Now for each style of stuffed roll I'm making, it is important that you keep the filling away from the edges of the dough because it has a little bit of oil and fat in it, and it will prohibit the sealing of the dough, and then when you bake it, the filling will bake out of the roll. So if you keep the filling away from the edges as you pinch those edges closed, it's very helpful. It took about an hour to make the two fillings, about 20 minutes to make the dough, and it will take me just over an hour to make 4½ dozen pierogi and 8 piroshki, but things go a little south when it comes time to baking them. You'll see what I mean in just a little bit. And this is the second style of pierogi. You just fold it over and try to remove a little bit of the air pocket between the two layers, and then use a glass or a biscuit cutter to create the crescent shaped roll. And you can see as I'm working with this dough how pliable it is, and it really is a nice and rich dough and easy to work with, and I can shape these rolls pretty much any way I'd like. And here's where I realized that my oven is not working. You might see in the background I do call my husband in for help, and you'll likely see him walking around examining and trying to figure out what's going on with the oven. So my plan B is to get the pans of rolls in the freezer to slow the yeast dough and buy some time while my husband gets this oven going. In the end, he had to replace the igniter. For the piroshki, I used 2.5 ounces of dough, and I shaped them into a disc, which is how I remember my mom made them. I will use an egg wash on all of the rolls and bake them in a 400-degree oven for about 20 minutes. I was able to bake the rolls later that evening, and I had 4 pans of rolls, so it took about an hour and a half to bake them all. And prep time was about 2.5 hours. So this was a 4-hour project that had a couple-hour interruption for equipment repair. So the pierogis turned out scrumptious, and the piroshki are not quite as I remembered. It seems like the filling is too wet, and I think it possibly needs more hard-boiled egg, but it's close, so I'll give it a try another time.